Hi, nice to meet you. I'm Robbie, and this series is about exhibiting as a profession, based on my knowledge gained during more than 60 years of practical experience. Yes, there are excellent courses at universities, but not everyone can follow them or needs such a whole course, while some basic knowledge will be very welcome. In the 80s, I had many hundreds of small exhibitions traveling around in Europe, and my customers had a great need for a little more knowledge about exhibiting. Because there was no vocational training at the time, I set up a special for my customers. That material and that experience is now the basis for this exhibiting course series that consists of part videos and part material on our Patreon site. In the videos, I only cover a few aspects. The rest can be found on Patreon. And by the way, the proceeds of Patreon go entirely to a non-profit education project in Vietnam. So the course is for anyone who wants or needs to be involved in exhibiting in a more or less professional way, regardless of whether this is in a museum, a gallery or cultural center. With making exhibitions, it's a bit like with photography. That was originally something for a very exclusive group and enthusiasts. Nowadays everybody has a phone, and there is no longer a clear line between professional photographers and pure amateurs. There's a big difference between the two, but there's a large grey area between them. We see the same when it comes to making exhibitions. Everybody does it pretty much. Often we are not even aware of it. I sometimes ask my students, who of you has ever made an exhibition? Most think they've never done it, until they got the follow-up questions. So, if you're going to an important meeting, you just grab some clothes that happen to be there and then let's go. Well, that turns out to be quite different. Depending on where they go and what they intend to do with the visit, they will carefully choose the clothes that suit the purpose, the situation and how they feel. Basically, exact same elements that play a role in making an exhibition. However, making exhibitions covers a much broader field. This example of making yourself up and what you probably thought of when it comes to making exhibitions shows already the sheer variety on this subject. One can have very large art exhibitions, but it can also involve the presentation of a single painting from the Antwerp collection to a single potential buyer. The presentation of that one work can cost much more than what is needed for a common group group exhibitions. There is also a big difference in acting. The Antwerp brothers, they buy expensive art and store it away for many years. For their collection, worth billions, they have a very special warehouse, incredibly safe and climate protected. It's a kind of prison for art. I once was invited to make some exhibitions for prisoners. Well, jails also have kind of group room where social activities are set up. However, entering the prison with the exhibition material was quite a process. Every nail had to be documented and justified. Well, so far for the exhibitor. On Patreon you find more about that. Now we move to the market, the work field for the exhibitor. The knowledge of the market is described as marketing. Actually, this is a verb because it describes the exchange of goods and services presented from the supply chain. And here we see an example of the supply chain. We see that there is always a seller, a product and a buyer. In a simple presentation we can say that it starts with the seller of paint who sells paint and the artist buys it. In the next step, the artist is the seller, he sells a work of art and the gallery owner is the buyer. And in the third and final step, the gallery owner is the seller, the product is still the same work of art and the buyer is now the customer. I'm often asked how one determines the cost price of a work of art. But this can largely be deduced from the supply chains already. Even this simple example makes several costs clear. The artist is going to buy paint. Okay, where is the paint bought? How does one get there? How long does it take to buy paint? How much paint should be bought? Will that paint be bought for the stock when the paint is on sale? So many questions, so many aspects that determines the price of a work. Anyone setting up a company must develop knowledge about all those phases in supply chains. When one knows the company situation, one also has insight into what customers need and how does one ensure that customer is satisfied. Well, Gerrit Staal, the former marketing director of Philips International, who helped me writing this piece on marketing, gives a beautiful but simple definition of marketing. It's all about the question, what would you like? That's it. A company, of course, is active in many more areas, as we can see in this simple diagram. Below, we see the artists, on the top the visitors, and in the center the organization, surrounded by all what matters. In all those areas, you are rarely the only one who is active there. And at any level, there can be competition in 3 different forms. If there is no competition, then we call it a monopoly. When there are a few competitors, it's called oligopoly. And when there are many, we speak of full competitiveness. For example, if a gallery owner wishes to have a monopoly on the sale of a work of a particular artist, he will have to offer the artist an exclusive contract. And it goes even further. If, for example, that artist works with a certain type of paint that has a very specific effect, the gallery owner also has to conclude an exclusive contract with the supplier. In order to realize a certain goal, the unique sale of a certain type of work, one must have a good knowledge of all market segments because they all exert influence directly or indirectly. That is why it's necessary for anyone who has their own company to make a good overview of the market situation. Marketing can be a lot of work. However, the other day I saw a video of Arnoud van den Bossen. He's a Belgian stand-up comedian, and he was explaining the marketing behind what is your target group. He started with drawing across. On the top he indicates having money, on the bottom having no money, on the left dumb people, and on the right smart people. So we have 4 market segments. Which one is important for us? Well, it's easy. Let's start with the right top, rich, smart people. Well, there is a reason why they are rich. They will outsmart you and buy the article for less than what you have paid for it. Right bottom, the smart poor people, they're very interesting to talk with, like teachers, however they have no money. On the left bottom, we find the dumb people with no money. You can sell anything easily to them. But the problems comes later. They always have problems like, well, the painting fell down and now the frame is broken. Lucky I still had a frame and it was just a little bit smaller. We only had to cut a bit of the left and the right. And for sure they will never pay the bill. Leaves the upper left the rich dumb people. That's your target group. Well, a good knowledge of the market regularly leads to interesting solutions. When it turns out that the works of art of several thousand euros do not sell, one can think that is because the prices are too high. That may indeed be the reason, but there may also be another reason. Buying art is an investment, and people are not so quick to invest in a product that they don't know or they do not know very well. In addition, art is an unclear product to invest. In the future, it's uncertain for much art. If the future is more certain, prices will immediately skyrocket. There is, however, a large potential market with a number of very important problems, such as unfamiliarity with the offer, the uniqueness of the offer, which means that it's usually available in a limited number of places, and then the fact that it's an investment. A group of Dutch artists came up with the art loan concept. Interested parties could borrow art for a small amount. In this way people got to know the work, and the interest in owning a particular work also increased, so it did. However, this group of potential buyers is not a clearly defined existing group. Therefore, if we wait for them to mature and have dispersed among all kinds of groups, it becomes more and more difficult to find and approach them. In the early 80s, I noticed that children were not interested in the exhibited work. Those days we had a combination of a bookstore and a gallery. The reason for this was that the correlation between readers of literature and visitors of art exhibitions is around 80%, which means that when we had an activity with books, we also did promote the actual exhibition, and vice versa, it also worked. We also had a special section with children books. Children always immediately went there. Well, the solution to the problem of bored children was quickly made. We also had to exhibit art made especially for children and on children's height, as you see on the drawing of Juliette de Wit. We created art exhibitions for children so obvious it's fairly easy to explain. As we saw, it's difficult to approach adult art lovers because they aren't one group. On the other side, especially in primary schools, we find a very mixed group of children who later become dentists as well as car mechanics. They are all in the same class and all can be reached with the same activities. Book producers understand this very well and bring wonderful children books to the market. When I opened an art library for adults, I immediately did the same for children. Of course, I was aware that children don't have that much money. Well, neither does adults, but a savings scheme is devised for that. A savings plan for children is trickier. They want to buy a certain work when they are 6, and then they start saving and have the money when they are 8, but then their interests have changed quite a bit. Well, often a lot. So the children's art library turned out to be completely unique. I thought all lender companies had one, but that was not the case. We turned out to be the first, and so we got a lot of free publicity. Nice articles like this one. It was in a magazine for children, and well, it's very nice. They made a long article and some nice pictures. And then very special, even a visit from national television. It's almost 40 years ago, but I still had a copy on tape. Although the quality isn't great, however, it's a kind of historic document, because when it comes to art lending, the Netherlands was already frontrunner. So it's not surprising that we received a letter from the Berlin High School of Arts, of which they collect information about art for children, which showed that children's art library was a completely new thing for one. There was a boy and he chose an artwork. Next, he pays the rent, and then he took the artwork home and hanged it on the wall. For those who wonder how safe it was to have an artwork on a bicycle, the work for the children's art lending was not with glass, but with special UV protecting plastic. And nice to tell, the young girl that was playing music is now a successful artist. Markets are beautiful. Knowledge of the market is vital for a company. And what is just as important is that the fellow players know that you are there. This applies to both suppliers and customers. Let's take an example that you organize a nice exhibition and to attract an audience. You mention on the advertising posters that all visitors get a cup of coffee for free. Such a promotion with free coffee seems like a good publicity stunt, but it's not at all. You don't promote your product, but the coffee. In my opinion, one should do promoting with products that are foreign to the branch. Well, you shouldn't do promotion with products that are foreign to the branch of your industry. I regularly see that famous people are invited to open an exhibition. Those are the so-called public attraction. Not only do they not always attract an audience, but they also have an image, and you can wonder whether the public that comes to the image is interested in your product. Furthermore, you have no influence at all on those public attractions, and there are many examples where that crowd puller suddenly appears in the news in a completely different way, and not always in a positive. So promotion is probably one of the most difficult aspects of the profession, mainly because you have so little control over it. Fortunately, we know from experience what can work in most cases. Take the example of the cup of coffee. Instead of a cup of coffee, you can also arrange with the artist to make a nice small postcard that can be given away. In the first place, you promote the artist with the artist's work. Secondly, a cup of coffee can be nice, but a postcard, well, it has much more potential and longer life expectancy. For years it can hang in someone's room and get friends excited about the work or not. Well, when it comes to promotion, the age-old concept of AIDA still applies. It's an abbreviation of attention, interest, desire, action. A perfectly logical concept for introducing a new product. When we look at this, it's all more clear that attracting attention through a transferring activity doesn't just lead to the next step for our product. Based on those 4 stages, it's also clear that a one-time action is not enough, but also that the subsequent action should have a different structure from attention to interest and so on. That is why it's important to focus your promotion activities on a special goal. In addition, within a company, there are different activities and on different stages for different purposes, and sometimes something completely unexpected comes up. So the other day, we just had bought a new building, and our private accommodation was partly an extension on the first floor with a large flat roof that leaked. The repair was quite expensive, so I entered the expenses as operating expenses. However, the tax authorities stated that a living space is not business space. My argument that if it leaks in the living space, it then also leaks 1 floor below. It did not lead to a change in the assessment. As a solution, I organized an art exhibition in the space, invited an alderman to open the exhibition, invited the newspapers for the photo, and submitted a new application to the tax authorities, and this time I got a substantial investment back. So, to close this market part, I like to give an example of how one can develop a huge market for art with a well thoughtful and executed plan. In the Netherlands we have the Art Week Foundation. This organization is partly responsible for the National Art Week, the election for the Artist of the Year, various regional art fairs, the National Association for Visual Artists and other activities. They realize both low threshold activities. In addition, they also realize art fairs that are of a significantly higher level, but which are more accessible than the famous international top art fairs. As their work is very interesting in terms of developing the art market, I discussed the activities in more detail on our Patreon site. One of the activities to help to realize the annual Europe Art Fair in Amsterdam. Easy to find on Google. In the following videos I will talk about a range of topics, from making contracts to the difference between a nail and a screw. Over the years I've seen the most bizarre ways to hang an artwork. The fact is that not everyone has a technical training, and in order to get the insurance money after breakage, it is first checked how the nail or screw was fixed in the wall. When they see it was done poor, you don't get any insurance money after all. So have a nice day and thank you for watching. I know from experience that there are always many questions and comments. For some of those questions you find already the answers on our Patreon site. There's also the possibility to respond more extensively, to comment and to communicate with other interested parties. And just once more, the proceeds for our Patreon sites are fully used for the Art for Children Gallery, for developing new educational projects and financing educational projects in Vietnam. Thank you, see you next video.